Laser vision correction has been around for quite some time. In that time, it has evolved. The very original idea was just merely to reshape the cornea. Now, the cornea is covered by a layer called epithelium, which replenishes itself, so that has to be somehow be moved out of the way. With a very original approach called PRK, the epithelium was really stripped off, had to then regrow, and the issue certainly with any of the more accurate treatment is that as the surface layer regrows, it can respond and alter the shape by itself, and hence make any of the superfine accuracies, any more specialized treatments, say like presbyopia corrections, less long-lasting. The other issue is that it takes longer to heal, and there can be up to 3 months of things to settle in. So along came the thought that we create what we call a little flap, a little layer that we can lift up, and then do the treatment within the inner substance of the cornea, and that flap is then repositioned. That gives much faster healing, of course, and much faster visual recovery, and it does not get the same kind of response of that surface layer, so the more precise minutiae of the treatment are permissible and have a long-lasting effect. Such flap was originally created with a blade to cut. Of course, the eye has to be stabilized, so there has to be a fair bit of pressure on the eye to hold it steady and hold it still. And originally, with the original devices, to the extent that for a few seconds, the vision often blacks out because there's a lot of pressure put on the eye. Fortunately, technology has evolved, because not all of us like the idea of having the vision blank out, albeit for 3 to 5 seconds. And lasers came along to also make the creation of that flap more precise and make it more in 3 dimensions. The original laser cutters for the flap, however, still involved a lot of pressure and involved flattening of the cornea rather than maintaining its natural shape. As things improved yet further, we have, and certainly I only use a laser cutter that follows the natural shape and curve of the cornea. So there's no flattening involved. Because there's no flattening involved, there's only minimal pressure, and it does not involve any blackout of vision at any point in time. And it involves very minimal energy to create that flap. That is the least traumatic and most precise way to create that flap, and I firmly believe that is the way I'd want to have my own flap created, and that the flap should be created that way to minimize any possible downside. For nearsighted patients, there is, in addition, however, also the option to avoid the flap altogether. If you think of the cornea as something that is almost akin to a sandwich, which is a tough layer up front, tough layer at the back, and a softer layer in between. The tough layers have the nerves. Cutting the nerves contributes to the transient dryness afterwards. There is a way to maintain these front and back layers and the vast majority of the nerves, and just merely reshape the cornea by working in the inner layers using the same laser that creates a flap cut, and again follows the curvature of the eye to create a small sliver of tissue, which is then removed through a very small side opening. So the most important structures in the corneas are untouched, minimally nerves are cut, and minimal energy is spent into the cornea. That then, by all accounts, would be a less traumatic approach, otherwise with a complex name referred to as small incision lenticule extraction. Lenticule refers to that sliver of tissue that's created, which has a recovery very similar to LASIK, while having a faster recovery and reversal of any temporary dryness that's induced, and maintaining all the other benefits of laser vision correction. Such correction is currently not available for farsightedness. but it's available for nearsightedness as well as astigmatism. And depending on the shape of the cornea that you may or may not have, and the optical imperfections in that cornea, that treatment can also be used and achieve a very similar effect to what Presbyon can achieve. Now, depending on the optical imperfections, we may offer you Presbyon or Smile with a Presbyon kind of like outcome, but that really would depend on the very characteristics of your eye at this point in time. Because the issue is a presbyopic patient has more dry eye. Yes. So that affects the initial recovery. The Relax patients, at least in our experience, seem to be at least less bothered by it. They still get a dry eye, but they're less bothered. So if the cornea has the right kind of aberrations to begin with, that will help you with the depth of field, because those aberrations aren't altered as much with Relax as they are with LASIK. You don't need all that extra depth of field correction with Smile. So I actually would prefer, if the cornea is the right kind of cornea, I prefer to do Smile than LASIK, because it's just a less traumatic approach.